We are here today at the home of Pam Stein, who was the 39th president of the Florida Association of School Psychologists. Hi, Pam.
Hi, Denise. Good to see you.
You too. Thank you for inviting me to your home. This is June 19th, 2018. And Pam, when did you serve as president?
1995-96 was my president term, and of course it's a 3-year term, so I did the president-elect the year before and then past president the year after.
Okay, so that's been quite a while. Now, what are you doing these
True.
days? Yeah.
What am I doing these days? Well, I am retired. I do some volunteer work for Guardian Ad Litem program, which I find very rewarding. And also, I think that helps to use some of the skills I developed as a school psychologist. I'm also involved in the equine industry, and I breed horses, and we race horses. So it's quite a turn from being in FASP, but I still like to keep up with children's issues and be involved in various ways.
Well, that sounds like you have quite an interesting and fulfilling life now, even way after being president of FASP. So I'd like to switch gears a little bit and ask you a couple of questions about your presidency. What were some of the major events or accomplishments that took place under your leadership as FASP president?
Okay, well, it started out in a very interesting way. I was elected president, and then there was my election was contested. So the election had to be held the second time, and I did win the second time as well. But the long and short of that was that my term was a little bit shorter than it would have been. So
when did you actually start?
I think it was around January officially. It was a real challenge for Bill Donaldson, who is my wonderful professional development, conference chair. He was invaluable because he kind of had to work with two people in a way because it wasn't an official result. But Bill, being Bill, was able to manage that very well. And so we got off the ground running very well and had a very successful conference in Orlando.
Well, I had no idea about that. Is there anything that you can say about the election being contested, or is that...
Well, there was an election challenge because of an irregularity, and so it was just better to hold the election again to erase all doubt. I remember that I had said to the FASP at the conference that I didn't want to be president if that wasn't the consensus and if there was any kind of question. So that was one of the challenges. The other was my real interest in FASP in terms of what I wanted to accomplish was in professional development. I was very much, and still am, an advocate for role expansion for school psychologists. I admire and respect the assessment role, and I think it's extremely important. But also, I think we have a huge role in violence prevention activities, programs, suicide prevention, counseling, consultation with teachers. So there's, I think, a whole range of services that school psychologists provide. And so that was really what I went into being president to accomplish. Well, lo and behold, when you're president of FASP, it doesn't always go the way you think it will. And the whole private practice issue reared its head again with the FPA. And so that ended up taking a lot of my early time trying to work through with the board members. And I was very fortunate to have very knowledgeable people around me. And if I could ever give any president advice, it would be to have people with great expertise. So I recall that we went to the FPA board. George Batch testified, and we were able to hold it down for another year, but it continued to be a problem. It wasn't resolved. It seems to wax and wane, and so that was something that I spent a lot of time doing. Finally, towards the end, I was able to work through a lot of the training types of activities and try to provide professional development activities to accomplish the goals that I had. So.
Were you referring to the title of school psychologist being used, or was there a different issue?
Yes, well, and the whole idea of licensure for private practice for school psychologists has been a controversial one with the FPA, and I don't know if that's occurring now or if that's been resolved, but I know it had popped up after I left the office.
Okay. So it does sound like you got off to a challenging start.
Absolutely.
But so during your tenure, do you feel like you were able to accomplish some additional goals and besides working with the FPA, and what other types of accomplishments do you recall from your presidency?
Well, absolutely. I worked with Pat Howard, and we went to Tallahassee to kind of bring the idea to the health administration of billing school psychology services with Medicaid. And we didn't accomplish that during the year I was president, but we did make the initial contact to begin that conversation, and of course it did later occur. So I felt really good about that. I also feel like one of the contributions, or maybe lasting, I'm not sure if they're still doing it, but I always felt a little frustrated. I've been in several board positions. I've been secretary, I've been in almost half the committees on the board. I was the supervision chair. And one of the frustrations I had was we kind of worked in isolation on committees, and NASP has work groups where people kind of collaborate across their individual board function. And so we got a group together to kind of operationalize what work groups would look like.
Well, we just took a quick break so that a very special visitor could join us. Do you want to say something about your visitor, Pam?
Yes, this is Pam Stein.
Okay.
And he's a love of our lives.
Oh, he is adorable. Hi, Kramer. Now, I guess we can get back to our conversation. And where did we leave off?
Well, we were talking about things that were accomplished during my presidency, and one of the areas I was very happy to see that we implemented was the work group concept. This was really, I think, something that they were doing in NASP, and as a group, we kind of felt like it might be something promising for FASP. And so we had a retreat with just a few people, so we could just kind of work through some details on how that would look. And it was up to me as president to operationalize it and make it happen. So we got together, and I think before I go into how we did it, the advantage of having work groups is I was often kind of frustrated that we all worked in our little area. If you're the professional development chair, you just worked, in professional development. If you were in diversity, you just worked with diversity. Work groups enabled the board meetings to become much more interactive. Instead of giving reports and talking the whole time in isolation, we were actually working together as a group, and it was really an exciting change from how we were operating before. And I think there was a lot of synergy with doing it that way. and I think a lot more collaboration. Not that there wasn't. These are all strong, very, very bright people that talk to each other. But I think the whole idea of cross collaboration across the committees and the functions was very effective, and I think that's still in operation. So I don't take credit for the initial idea because it's been done before, but I think it was challenging to get it to work for our association, and setting up the groups that would work well together, that were relevant to working well together. So that was set up, and I think that was an area that I felt really good about.
Great. Well, multiple heads certainly work better than one, and when you have all the expertise of the FASP Executive Board, I can see how things really start clicking. So
Absolutely.
that sounds great. During your tenure, were there any political, environmental, or personal issues that influenced your presidency at all?
Well, of course, the politics of role expansion, there was some political feelings about that. Some people felt that if you expanded your role, that meant you were giving up assessment, and that was never my intention. And I really tried to make that clear because assessment is always going to be an important part of what a school psychologist is. On a personal level, I sustained 2 major losses while I was the president. My mother died, and also I was in the process of getting a divorce. In fact, my name now is Pam Stein. It was Pam Taylor at the time. So it was hard. When you're dealing with a lot of those types of things, at the same time, you need to be strong. And one thing that I felt that I got out of the presidency, I hope I gave, but also that I received, was building a lot of strength that I didn't know I had.
I can imagine. I had no idea that you experienced those losses during your presidency. What would you say that personally being president of FASP has meant to you?
I think it helped develop my leadership style. I was a supervisor of psychological services for Polk County Schools. And one thing I've learned is you are not the person that has to have all the answers when you're in a leadership position. You need to have really good people around you, and you need to listen to them, and you need to have their expertise heard. So I learned how to utilize that in terms of getting things done. You can't make everything happen yourself. You need solid people that are committed, and I think that energizes people. So I'd like to think that is something I've done as a leader. And so I think it really did help my leadership skills.
Excellent. Is there anything else you'd like to impart to us as the 39th president of FASP?
Absolutely. I think school psychologists more than ever are needed, and more of them are needed. We're really dealing with a lot of complex issues in the schools. The suicide rate is increasing again. We've had terrible school violence issues. The whole idea of the over-testing and some of that going on right now, not by school psychologists, but teachers being assessed with test scores and constant assessment that's going on with kids. I think all these are issues that school psychologists can really lend their expertise. And so now more than ever, I think school psychology is a vibrant profession, and I'm glad that we have school psychologists, and we need many, many more.
Thank you, Pam Stein, 39th President of the Florida Association of School Psychologists.
Thank you, Denise.